Hey everyone, it's time for another build. This time it's going to be Ensky's Paper Theater series. This one is PT-169 and it's titled Haku's Rice Ball. And this is actually depicting a scene from the movie Spirited Away by Studio Ghibli. And it is actually one of my favorite scenes early on in the movie because this is a point where Sen or Chihiro at this point believes that Haku, who she thought was helping her, she finds out to be kind of working for Yubaba, and he was really mean. But this is a scene where after her first night, Haku, wakes her up and then lets her see her parents who were turned into pigs. And then to kind of comfort her, he actually packed her some rice balls, and the rice balls were enchanted to give her more strength and kind of uplift her spirits. And I think it's a very touching moment when you realize that Haku is actually a pretty good guy. So when I bought this, I just love this moment right here, depicting this rice ball moment. But I actually did not realize when I bought this set that No Face has a little appearance here. So when I was actually quite surprised in a good way when the first layer I'm actually putting together No Face's mask, and I thought it was kind of funny because I did not notice this at all. And it's just nice to be able to see No Face, who I actually really like a lot in this movie. So and this one's really simple. The other ones usually require two layers, but this one was just the white mask, and it's very small and tiny. And if you don't actually look at it, you kind of miss that he's actually in this photo. One thing about this set that I thought was interesting was I thought it would be more complex than it actually is, and on each box there's a rating on the back of out of 5 stars for difficulty, 5 being extremely difficult and 1 being very easy. And this set was in the 3-star range, which is actually the same as all the other series that I worked on for the paper theater so far. And I thought it was interesting because when you look at the image on the box, it looks like it'll be a lot more difficult because there's all these intricate parts. But when I started putting it together, I realized that it was actually just all the pre-cut laser cuts, and actually for the most part it's about the same amount of layers and same amount of overlapping as some of the other ones. So it was really just showing how intricate these pieces are. It's actually really fun to see how they came up with this when you're actually building, let's say for example, the characters. As you see, there's multiple layers and a lot of them have a certain color on them, but in the final product you may only see about 1% of it. It's sometimes used just for a highlight or maybe like a shadow detail, or for example the brown layer that you start off with for Sen or Chihiro is actually just used so that her face, her eyebrows, her eyes will actually be brown. But it's really interesting because you get to see what the process was of putting these layers together when they're designing it, and how you could have a whole layer of one color just to be used for like a little part as a detail. And I love how they use a darker color to create the shadow line. Because this is a 2D cutout, if you watch the 3D animation, you have your shadows usually. If it's a pink, let's say clothes, then it's a little bit darker pink or like a red. So in this instance, they use the red layer underneath the clothing and have little cutouts so that that red now represents the shadow. And I thought it was a really nifty detail and trick that they used to add some more depth to this drawing. So I actually wanted to just stop almost at this point because if you look at Haku and like the colors that are kind of varied on his face and his clothing, it kind of reminded me of one of those 80s print posters where they're using all these kind of greens, blues, and reds with some black line work to represent like a stylish poster. And it kind of almost was a throwback to that, and actually kind of did like how it looked, although it doesn't represent how Haku looks at all. But I thought it was just fun, and maybe one day I'll try to create something similar to that where it's like a throwback to an 80s poster or something. So I feel like there was kind of a 3-stage transformation of Haku while building this. As you saw originally, it looked like an 80s poster, and then when the hair got split into black and white half and half, it kind of reminded me of Sia, you know. And then finally when I put the last layers of the hair on, it finally started to look like Haku. And I thought it was kind of interesting how there's a transformation happening with this character who happens to be transforming god. He's a river god, I believe, that saved Chihiro in the movie when she was a little kid and she lost her shoe. For this build, I believe Haku was the most difficult part of this set. Chihiro or Sen was actually a lot easier to build, and I felt Haku was just a little more intricate, that I had to take my time and my patience to make sure all the layers are correctly aligned and to make sure to clean up all the excess glue that might be filled in between the little slits or openings. And so you will see me doing a lot of toothpick action or using an X-Acto knife to clean it up. And I think this is kind of why it was on a level 3, mostly due to Haku. The backdrop layer was the one that I was most intimidated by, because when you looked at the print package, it looked like it will be very intricate and it's going to require a lot of intricate parts that need to be glued together. But as you can see here, it's really just those 2 green parts that were laser cut out to make it look very complex, and then you just add in a few flowers on top that are layered to give that additional detail. But in reality, the green part was actually the easiest part to do, the landscape background, after the second layer, which was no face. I was a little confused in the beginning for the orientation of how to put the flowers in. A lot of these layers where you're putting it over a full layer of another color, there's usually these opening marks that you know where to line it up. And it was a little confusing in the beginning just because I didn't know which direction I was supposed to be orienting the flowers until I found the exact mark. So a lot of times what I would do is pre-visualize by putting the flower down before putting any glue on, just to make sure it lines up and it looks right. And then once I figure it out where it's supposed to go, I will actually glue the flower pieces on. And the last layer was actually even simpler than the previous layer, because it's just 1 green piece that I had to glue on instead of 2. The only part was that since it's a bigger piece, I had to make sure to apply the glue quickly, because it does dry quickly using a paintbrush. So I just had to make sure to time it right and just get it on as quickly as possible, and then clean up any of the gunk that would seep out. Now that I'm done with all the layers, here are the 6 layers. A lot of these paper theaters are 6 layers, so you start off usually with the first layer. In this case, it was just a red piece, which made it actually easier. And the fun part is putting it together and seeing the final overlapped image that makes one image. And a little tip that I like using is I have this little glue bottle that I've got from a different model kit, where I can just squeeze out a little bit of that glue, and that glue is actually tacky glue that was just put into a smaller bottle, so I can actually squeeze a little bit of glue at a time. And as you can see, the frame holder, there's these little slots that you're supposed to kind of fill it in with glue. And I noticed that with that squeeze bottle, if I just put it right up against it, just squeeze a little bit of glue in, the glue will go right in between the slots, and once I slide that into the corners where they need to go, you cannot see the glue at all, and it actually dries pretty quickly and it looks very clean. So it's a little tip that I've been using for a lot of my paper theater builds. Now, my favorite part of this whole video, the reveal. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I really enjoyed making this one, and I love how the final product came out. If you are interested in building these, I say go out and get some. You can buy it on Amazon or a lot of different retailers online. So thank you for watching this video, and hopefully you'll watch another one of my videos very soon. See you soon.